Most of the trail runs, as I'm sure you'll be familiar with, tend to be hillier than road runs. As a general rule of thumb, they're in beautiful countryside, but it usually does involve hills. So a question for Andrew is, you do particularly hilly events. 10,500 metres of climbing at the UTMB is a pretty hard yakka. How much emphasis do you place on hill training when you're training? And do you do specific hill repeat sessions or stair repeat sessions, or do you just fit in whatever running you can around daily life?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to time. So I live up at near Hornsby, near the Kringle National Park. So a lot of those trails around there, things like Quarry Road, they're just hilly basically, nothing crazy, but just running those as part of my long run. So I get a lot of hills in generally, but I always try to get to the Blue Mountains and do something like Mount Solitary or even 6-foot track. You go out, a good run is from the start of 6-foot track out to the top of Plugy and back or something like that, which is hard. Yeah, it takes time, it's many hours, but I usually try to get a few runs like that in the build up to something like UTMB or North Face 100, or even on the North Face 100 course. It's good if you can get out there and do that. But again, it's just the time to get up there, so I'll try and do that maybe 3 or 4 times in the build up.
During the week, do you, I guess in the weekends you can run on trails near home as well, but would you ever, I know I've seen you commuting into work a few times, so there's obviously some hills in that, but would you do, so for people that, I don't know, live on the North Shore or somewhere close to a hill, do you do repeated hill sessions on roads, or do you try and find a trail with repeated hill sessions and go up it 15 times so you get enough elevation in, or?
I don't really. I've started doing some stairs though, and I did that today at lunch out of Woolloomooloo.
Oh yeah.
Which is, I just find it really tough, which I kind of at the moment think that's probably a good thing.
Yep.
The way I feel at the end of that session is kind of different to anything else. I basically walk back to work afterwards, which is unusual. And I'm just a mess for the rest of the day. So at the moment, I think that's probably a good theory that's doing something good for me.
Yep.
So that's just, they're not big steps out there, but it's kind of a minute up and down. So I do that. I try to do like 40 of those, and try to build that up.
40.
Yeah, so slowly building it up. But that's like a minute. It's not a huge climb. I think ideally you want to be getting something where you can go uphill for.
I was pretty happy with 5.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to get a hill like say Mount Solitary where it's at least half an hour or more of just steep uphill, and maybe do that a couple of times. But it's just hard to find that.
Yep.
So the next best thing for me is something like stairs. I don't really do normal hill reps. Partly I just mentally. All the stairs are tough mentally, but I'm just a bit soft in my training when it comes to that sort of stuff.
And racing.
I do a couple of reps, then I just kind of pull the pin.
Interestingly, we're going to there's going to be 2 spectrums of the stages in life here tonight with Andrew and James as well, because Andrew's got 2 young children and a job, and James is sort of semi-employed at the Body Mechanic. He sort of turns up from time to time, but he James runs 13 times a week. He doesn't have the family commitment, so his his ability to dedicate himself towards training is more than someone who has to juggle work and family. So Blair and I both juggle work and family, so we're at the Body Mechanic. We're definitely familiar with squeezing training sessions in around other commitments, and that's important. So actually, just mentioning something about what we're talking about there with Andrew with hill training. As a general rule of thumb, I think it's worth people knowing that the 3 most likely training sessions in your week to cause injuries are speed work, in inverted commas. So speed work for some people can be 400 metre reps on a track. For other people, it might be 1k reps. Anything beyond 1k reps, I think, are relatively safe. But if your event is 45k or 50k or 100k, your ability to run 60 seconds repeatedly or 75 seconds or whatever it happens to be around a 400 metre track is relatively irrelevant to your overall race performance. But the risk involved in doing those sessions is enormous in terms of causing injuries. If you get your body used to a reasonable volume of training where, let's just say, your average training pace is 5-minute Ks, a long run might be 5.5-minute Ks, and a tempo session, in inverted commas, might be 430s. Yet you go out and do 400 metres and the coach wants you doing them about 2.5-minute Ks or 3-minute Ks. The change in your running technique and the increased load in your body and the increased stride length is a big risk. Hills, however, especially given that you're going to be entering hilly events, are a fairly safe way of applying a similar load to your cardiovascular system but not so much to your body. When you're running up a hill, it's hard to go 3.5 minute Ks, or even 4 minute Ks, or probably even 6 minute Ks up some hills. So just naturally the hill's going to slow you down. It's hard to take long strides. Long strides are what causes most people their repetitive running injuries. You can't take long steps efficiently up a hill, so it naturally shortens your gait anyway. So if you are time poor and you want to make the most out of some training sessions, then actually getting on some hills or some stairs, so Andrew doesn't have to because he's got a gift, but if you can get onto a hill and do some hill repeats and you can cope with the boredom, if you're trail running and you can do it on a trail, better still. But I think running up Parawee Street, I don't know, 6 times at a reasonably steady pace is actually a fairly safe way to give your cardiovascular system a hard time, make you better at climbing, but also be relatively safe in terms of the load that it applies to your body. So yeah, hill running and stair running is definitely a good thing to do for your training when you're going to be racing. Downhill is a skill of its own in terms of technique, and it's also it's almost probably best considered a necessary evil. So in order to be able to run down a hill properly or well in a race and not blow up your quads or hurt your knees, you need strength in your legs, and the best way to get that strength in your legs is by running down hills. So actually you do need the downhill training component as well, but downhill does put a lot more load on your body. There's more gravity effect, you tend to take longer strides even though you shouldn't, and there is more loading through your joints and through your quads. It's that loading, if it's applied gradually enough, is what will make your legs stronger. So don't go out on your first session. It's like going to the gym and doing 1,000 lunges instead of 20 on your first session. You know, you can't walk for 3 days because you did so much damage to your muscles, and then the potential gains from the training are lost because you had to rest for so long to recover. So same with downhill running. If you hammer yourself so hard in a downhill training session that you can't run for a week, you've lost the benefit of it. If you do a gentle downhill session and then over the period of the next few weeks or months, you gradually increase the steepness of the hills and the intensity at which you go, you'll gradually increase the load to your body and your quads will get stronger, your bone density actually increases, so your body starts adapting to the changes you put on it, but it happens gradually. Our minds adapt quickly and our cardiovascular systems adapt quickly, and our bodies are really slow, which is why most people come in here, because they do too much too soon. So downhill's important, but be careful.
Mark, do you mind if I think that was a really good question. So I could just add to that, the forces going through your lower limb when you jump from a height, say off this bench, could be up to sort of 6 to 8 times body weight. If you run fast down a hill, such as Parawee or Mount Solitary, if you don't have good technique in absorbing the forces through your foot and ankle, your knee, your hip, just like you've got to have good technique when you're running on flat surfaces, which Mark and Blair and his team here can teach you how to do, then you get significant forces through your joints, which can injure your joints, either in that one training session or over the course of time. Also, you can get other injuries, patellofemoral pain, ITB problems, tendinopathies. Patellar tendinopathy is very common if you've got incorrect running downhill technique. So it's a real skill of its own to learn how to attenuate the forces, and you should gradually build into your downhill stair running or downhill incline running, and just gradually let your system get used to it.
As a general rule of thumb, short steps are best. So if you are running down hills, take as many little steps as you can. Might slow down your overall pace, but you'll gain it up the next hill because your quads won't be dead and your knees won't be sore. But like Tom said, we specialise in running technique here, so quick plug for the body mechanic, so come and see us and we can teach you how to do it properly.
Is there a general rule in terms of like how much you can increase by to allow your bones to adapt?
The 10% rule is a good one to stick by. So your total, don't increase your total weekly volume by more than 10%. So if you're running 50k a week, then the following week don't run more than 55. But there's more to it than that. I think listening to your body is a skill that most people don't have. They listen to their GPSs and their coaches and how far you're meant to train that week, and you get really annoyed if you don't do it. But you've got to listen to your body. So if what Tom was saying, the increase in load is huge when you're running down hills. So if you finish a particular hill running session and your knee hurts, especially if it's got a bit of swelling in it, that's a sign you've done too much and you need to probably get it checked out, but at least it means that you know that load was too much and you can't do it again in the near future. But that tissue adaptation, which is tendons getting stronger, muscles getting bigger, bone density increasing, happens over years. You just can't rush it. Just one more question on hills, Tuck. In Mount Solitary, which I'm too scared to do, and UTMB, and actually one small section in the North Face, there are hills that are physically too steep to run. So in some places you're grabbing a branch and pulling yourself up as opposed to being able to run up a hill. But there's other places like Kadumba in the North Face, which for those who don't know Kadumba, it's 10.5k. I think 10.5k from the bottom to the top. I don't know what the average incline is, but it feels bloody steep when you're out there. And it does feel like it goes for a long time. And the elite guys can run it. Most people choose to walk it. But do you have a strategy before you start a race thinking that's a hill that I know I might lose 2 minutes by walking it, but I'll save 20 minutes because I'm going to save the energy that doesn't take to run up it?
If I know the race, I'll have a strategy. So like 6 foot track, I know I can run it. So I've done it before. Yeah, like Kadumba, the Kadumba half marathon I've done recently, which is basically down the hill and turn around and go back up. So that's, I've done that before, and I know I can run that. But in North Face, I wouldn't. Yeah, I know I'm going to do a run walk strategy on it, but it's kind of
deliberately.
Like you kind of just it's more on the spot though when you're there, because there's that point you need to work out when you're trying to run up a hill and you kind of go nowhere. You use all this energy, but it's kind of pointless. And you sort of work that out as you go. Especially, I've seen, you see sometimes people walk past someone running, which happens occasionally. And it's kind of funny to see, but there's a point there where you're sort of wasting a lot of energy, I think, trying to run.
I think, for hills, it's a bit of a grey area, and it depends on your cardiovascular fitness and how much hills and stuff you've done. Stairs, I don't know if anyone's been on Nellie's Glen, so at the start of the 6 foot track, you go down a pretty technical staircase, which there's some really big stairs and some really small ones, and you're turning corners and they're slippery. Rick and I went up training there a couple of weekends ago and came up it twice. The first time I ran the whole way up, which is hard work and feels like hard work. The second time, I deliberately probably walked about 400 metres of it, so anything that was particularly deep stairs, I was sort of walking with my hands on my knees, so which is quite an efficient way to walk up steep stairs. And I reckon, I didn't actually time it, but I probably cost maybe 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes in terms of the overall time, and I reckon I saved 50% of the energy. The first time, and it was the second time I got up it, so the first time I went up it, I was absolutely knackered. The second time I went up was maybe 2 minutes slower, but 50% pressure. And it's because I've walked. So I think in the likes of the 6 foot, pretty much all the climbing's actually, it's not on stairs, it's on steep fire trails. So if you feel strong enough to run them, you can run them. But I think on stairs, and with the new North Face course, do you still come up Nellie's Glen at about 60k? That's a good set of stairs to walk up. You've still got 35k or 40k or whatever to go once you get to the top as well. But I think the same is true for any fairly brutal set of stairs. The amount of energy you save walking up with a fast walking pattern, you'll still be breathing and you'll still be working hard, but hands on your knees so you get a little bit of upper body helping as well. The amount of energy you save for the rest of the race is enormous. So I think have a look at the course profile and think about that before a race, so you've got a bit of a plan when you're out there.
Yeah, one more thing. Most of the training of the hills, I think, is more about getting stronger to be able to handle the hill and then run afterwards, as opposed to get too fast to getting up the hill. So by North Face, you say there's a lot of really runnable sections. So if you need to be able to get up the hill and then be able to run the flat sections well, instead of just being a bit of a mess and your legs aren't working so well. So I think that's more important than the speed of getting up the hill.
Yep.